Let's talk about the ongoing ceasefire negotiations over in the Middle East. President Biden kind of supplanted himself as one of the most, if not the most, hated presidents in the Middle East by announcing that there was going to be a ceasefire while licking an ice cream cone. An image that will, I think, live in infamy for decades to come. Worse still, it seems like it wasn't even true. That he may have been doing this on Monday, right before Michigan was supposed to vote, to try to depress the uncommitted vote, is a thought almost kind of too cynical to even contemplate. I'm going to tell myself that it was just his addled mind that allowed him to kind of lie about this, or his spokesperson John Kirby was lying. One or the other. Let's play John Kirby's response to Biden's claim that he expected a ceasefire by this coming Monday.
Just to follow on Weej's previous question, though, we've learned, according to an Israeli source, that Netanyahu was quite surprised by the president's comments about his expectations that there would be a ceasefire by Monday. So that doesn't bode a lot of optimism that one of the key parties was surprised by that timeline the president had set. So why did he say Monday?
I can't speak for the surprise that foreign leaders have or don't have with regard to things that we're saying. The president talked to y'all after staying completely up to speed, and he has been kept up to speed on how these negotiations are going, and he shared with you some context, and he certainly shared with you his optimism that we can get there in hopefully short order.
Ryan, can I just say how weird it is that he felt the need to confirm that the president has stayed, quote, completely up to speed on the negotiations? That's a strange thing to say. And
then lied, if that's what Kirby is saying.
Right.
Yeah, he was up to speed on the negotiations, but then he said something that shocked the people who are actually engaged in the negotiations.
But it almost felt like a tell that, like, oh, like they're keeping.
Don't worry, we're keeping him in the loop.
Yeah, it was weird.
So Matt Miller over the State Department was also asked about this. Let's roll his response.
Back up the assertion that you just made in response to one of Saeed's questions that we're closer today than we were yesterday?
Just that we continue negotiations, and I can't, unfortunately.
Well, why?
Fine,
but continuing negotiations.
I
so they haven't broken down. Is that why?
So I can't really answer that without getting into the underlying substance of the negotiations. But the talks continue, and we think we continue to make progress on them.
But I'm not. Well, yeah.
You just said. I said we think we continue to make progress. Well, that is the basis of my statement.
You said we are closer today than we were yesterday.
Continuing to make progress.
There isn't anything you can give to us now or present to us or tell us that would actually back up the idea that a ceasefire/hostage deal is closer today than it was yesterday.
I can never show you definitive progress in talks that by their very nature are secret.
I mean, I get the logical point he's making.
Yeah.
That there's secret talks, he's not going to say anything about them, and so therefore he can't back up what he's saying there.
Yeah.
But the context is that the President of the United States just said that he expects a ceasefire on a very specific time frame, 1 week from the day that he said it.
Yeah.
And then he had specifically said, we're closer today than we were yesterday. So those are very reasonable questions. Okay, great. Why? Like, can you tell us anything?
Right.
Because we're hearing from sources in Hamas and from sources in the Israeli government that they're not very close at all.
Qataris too, yeah.
And they're saying there's not remotely close.
Yep.
So anyway, there you go. That's what the American government's going to share with us.
And again, that's why I think it's really noteworthy that Kirby said the president has been, quote, up to speed, kept up to speed on the negotiations, because it actually seems like Biden, and I know this is fraught, but it seems like Biden might not have been up to speed. And so when they say that he's been kept up to speed, that's sort of the tell. They're like projecting what they want to, the opposite of what the truth is, to say he's totally up to speed. Maybe he's not up to speed because he's not lucid enough to be a significant part of these negotiations.
Yeah, unfortunately, everything we keep hearing
is that
Biden is driving this policy.
Or Biden's lieutenants understand the Biden policy well enough to drive it for him.
I don't know. You would hope that. I mean, and maybe that represents a lack of lucidity. That Biden is just so kind of locked into his ideological, unconditional support of Israel that he's unable to absorb new inputs.
Even when people are saying like this 5-alarm fire in Michigan, like you have to start reconciling your Mr. Two-State solution, decades of two-state solution, with what Netanyahu is doing as Mr. One-State solution. It's wrecking you.
And he's changing nothing. Like he went on Seth Meyers the other day, right? And Meyers, presses him on this. Meyers, who's Jewish American, by the way. Biden responds by saying, I'm a Zionist. You don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. And I believe that no Jew in the world is safe without Israel. Talking to a Jewish American, like telling him that he's incapable of keeping Seth Meyers safe in his own country. Yeah. What a failure on his part. If that's true, if there are so many Nazis running rampant in this country, then go do your job and make this country safe for everyone. The idea that you can outsource your job as American president to keep all Americans safe by saying, well, we've got some other country. Can you imagine if he said, no Nigerian is safe here in the United States without Nigeria? They'd be like, well, how about you keep the Nigerians in the United States safe? Now, that's a nationality question rather than a religion question. But the entire premise of it is just so convoluted.
But this is one of the other reasons that I read these leaks in a different way, coming from the right than people on the left, because I do think it's a frustration. We know that like Biden's own staff is kind of split on this, that there's some people that are hardcore with him on that question of Zionism and the two-state solution. We know there are other people in the administration that are less comfortable with that. Karine Jean-Pierre herself wrote an op-ed about the problems with that. What was this, like 3 years ago? I think it was from HuffPost. So, I mean, these divides exist in the administration.
Go to Newsweek.com.
Oh, it was Newsweek.com.
Yes, the new weird Newsweek. That's
there you go. But actually,
I think it was Newsweek. Yeah.
We have another clip of Matt Miller getting pressed on some of these problems for the administration. We can roll that.
There have been now at least 6 documented instances depicting members of the IDF displaying or rifling through women's underwear. And of course, that's just on camera. Soldiers have, as we've seen, stripped and tortured Palestinians. There have been a reported history of soldiers abusing children that they've detained even before October 7th. And of course, investigations need to be pursued. But still, given all that we've seen from Israeli forces just up to this point, what's the U.S. government doing in response now, given the UN experts' alarm at credible allegations of human rights violations and sexual violence committed against Palestinians?
We make clear to the government of Israel that we expect them to behave consistent with the laws of war and consistent with their own rules of engagement. And we have seen the Israeli military come out and say it is conducting its own investigations into reports of soldiers who have failed to comply with either of those two sets of rules. And that's appropriate, and that's what you expect a professional military to do. And we expect those investigations to proceed, and if appropriate, hold the responsible parties accountable.
Yeah, and this is in response to the new Tik Tok trend among IDF soldiers to kind of steal lingerie and other garments.
I saw canes.
Palestinian women, canes. One guy curled up in a crib and put that on TikTok. Nobody knows where that child is. Has that child been killed by the IDF? Is that child starving? Is that obviously the child has been pushed out of his or her home because the soldier is now having a good time sleeping in the kid's crib. The one though correction that I would make to Miller's point here, he says that we expect the Israelis to abide by international law. The U.S. government actually has given Israel until middle of March to sign a document saying that they will abide by international law in order to continue to receive American weapons. The irony is that within the U.S. government, that represents a victory for the people who have been pushing for some sort of accountability and some sort of reckoning with the human rights abuses that Israel is committing with American weapons. But it also puts on display a rather glaring problem, which is that, wait a minute, you're giving them until the middle of March to follow the law?
And in the meantime,
that's insane.
And in the meantime, saying, we expect our partners in Israel.
Right. You've been saying that you expect them to follow. Why do you expect them to follow it if it's going to take them until the middle of March even to decide whether or not they're going to put their signature on a meaningless document? asserting that they're going to follow the law when they haven't been following the law for months and years, actually.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Let's put this next element up on the screen just to wrap up this block. A Reuters report inside the Democratic rebellion against Biden over the Gaza war. We covered earlier in the show today, Ryan, what happened in Michigan last night, which, I think really was worse than what the Biden administration even expected. If you put the protest vote together, you're somewhere near 20% of voters coming out against Biden. He won Michigan in 2020 by 155,000 votes. The protest vote itself was around 140-something thousand votes just last night in a low turnout primary for Joe Biden. We played Debbie Dingell early in the show saying this was even Ypsilanti. It wasn't just Dearborn. This is kind of across the board in places where there are concentrations of young voters, African-American voters, and people across the board are concerned about this issue for Joe Biden, and that may translate into how people vote. It does seem, and according to this Reuters report, people were caught off guard in the White House.
That might be the most shocking part. Like, what do you mean you were caught off guard?
Right.
The Reuters report tells us that the Biden campaign really did believe that this was isolated to Arab and or Muslim voters, and that once the campaign really heated up and the contest was between Biden and Trump, that it would fade as a concern. Like that was, according to this article, the actual belief of grown people who looked at this situation, analyzed it, and came to a conclusion. That is rather shocking.
Yeah, it seems like at the very least they would be aware. You can prosecute your policy, but to have the blind spot about what this is doing is somewhat shocking.
Yeah, if you want to say, look, we're happy to lose over this. If they want to say that, okay, that's an immorally principled position.
Right.
But to say we're going to engage in this and people are going to forget about it because Trump is so out of touch.
Right.
That it's genuinely shocking.
But this is where actually, and that's an interesting point, this is where Democrats, and especially establishment Democrats, laser focus on Donald Trump since 2016, a guy who is super polarizing and absolutely will get them votes in battleground states that are critical to winning re-election. There's no question about it. But if you just bank on that without also advancing an agenda that a lot of other people feel, because on the margins, if you lose other people, the marginal math against Donald Trump doesn't work. So you can't do one and not the other. You can't just say Donald Trump is so toxic that as much as we talk about him, so long as it's a binary choice between a Democrat, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump, a binary choice between Amy Klobuchar or Pete Buttigieg and Donald Trump, or Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, as long as we have that binary choice, we can do what we want policy-wise. That's just stupid.
Yeah. And you know what? Biden might still win, which is the craziest thing on the planet. He might.
Well, again, I mean, like the binary choice is not good for Republicans.
Right.
They're
Trump
not
might
wrong about
Trump
that.
might lose, is the more accurate way to put it.
They're not wrong about that. Again, it is not helpful to Republicans to have the binary choice on the national level, even though we talked earlier in the show about Trump making gains with certain demo blocks that are helpful to Republicans. It's still, the binary choice isn't great.
Imagine if Biden wins and he's still president in 2028. Like he would leave in 2029, like January 2029.
I can genuinely not imagine Joe Biden in 2029.
It's going to be something to see.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.